Thank you for that closing statement. I think it's time now for the council to deliberate. And as we go into that, I'd like to ask Mr. DeSisto to present for the council members the legal standards by which we will be rendering our decision tonight. Mr. DeSisto.
Thank you. The applicant, National Grid LNG LLC, has filed for a federal consistency certification for the proposed construction of a liquefied natural gas liquefaction facility. The facility will be adjacent to the existing LNG storage tank, associated vaporization plant, and truck station, and that's located at 121 Terminal Road in Providence. NG LNG is seeking a federal permit from the Federal Energy Regulatory Agency, that's FERC, under the Natural Gas Act, 15 U.S.C. 717, subsection 7C. An application under this section that has a reasonably foreseeable effect on any land or water use or coastal natural resources must be consistent with the enforceable policies of a federally approved state coastal management plan. The Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Plan, or CRMP, is a federally approved state coastal management plan. The project is located within the first tier of Rhode Island's coastal zone, which extends 200 feet inland from a coastal feature, and it is within a coastal community, the city of Providence, and is therefore subject to a consistency review by CRMC under 15 CFR Part 930, Subpart D. This consistency review does not include the issuance of an assent or variance.
Should.
Under the case of Weavers Cove Energy LLC versus the Rhode Island Coastal Resources Management Council at 583 F sub 2nd 259, that's the district court for Rhode Island, in 2008, FERC's jurisdiction preempts state permitting and review of the siting, construction, and operation of this project, although the remainder of the consistency review remains intact under 15 CFR Part 930. Under the National Environmental Policy Act, that's 42 U.S.C. Section 4331, FERC is charged with the review of public health and safety issues, as well as the social issues that have been raised during these hearings. The one determination necessary for this matter is set forth under 15 CFR Part 930 Subpart D, Sections 930.62 and .63, and that is whether the project is consistent with the enforceable policies and standards relating to the enforceable policies that deal with coastal effects under the CRMP. A determination of consistency or an objection to consistency has to be based on sufficient information to support the conclusion. If the council objects to consistency, should also, if possible, articulate how the project can be made consistent, and that's under section 930.63B. There are two issues from the staff report that need to be addressed, and that is the physical life of the liquefaction facility and its decommissioning. The other one is the scenic and visual impacts of the project. The vote tonight is whether or not the project is consistent or there is an objection to consistency, and that is what your motion should be directed to. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Do any council members have questions of Mr. DeSisto? Yes.
Mr. DeSisto, regarding the physical life of the plant, how would we put a stipulation on that? Would it be, if we wanted to put a 10, 20, 30-year stipulation, would it be from the CO or from the granting of a permit?
It's already 45 years old, this tank.
It would be for the granting of, I'm going to use the term that you used. It would be from the granting of the CO.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. DeSisto? Okay. Thank you, Mr. DeSisto. I'll entertain a motion, then we can have discussion on it.
Madam Chair, I would make a motion
Yes, Mr. Sahajian?
Based on the findings of fact contained in the staff report, I submit that the application is consistent with the enforceable policies. However, I would like, part of my motion, I would like to add a stipulation that the permit would be for a period of 30 years subsequent to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy on the building. I find that the visual impacts are relatively minor compared to what's already in the area. And I also think we should delegate to the executive director the authority to file any appropriate or necessary paperwork to move the application forward. That's my motion.
Okay, any discussion on the motion as has been set forth by Mr. Sahajian? Discussion, okay, second. Is there a second for that? Okay. And then any discussion on that motion?
There better be discussion. Come on, people. What about the people? Whoa.
I do have a question just on Mr. Sahajian on the stipulation. Can you explain that again for the council members?
I propose a 30-year limitation on the use of this facility, and that the 30 years should start upon the issuance of a certificate of occupancy from the federal government.
And that's based on the representation from the applicant of the 30-year design life.
And I think the representation by the applicant was a little, open-ended, and that's why I want to put 30 years on it.
Wow.
And thank you for that. Any discussion on the visual impact from the other council members?
How about the impact on the lives of the children that live in this area?
Yeah.
As a point of order, may I address the council?
Yes,
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do appreciate the motion very much. To stipulate to 30 years, we're concerned that it does... Excuse me, there's someone speaking. Thank you. Does a potential disservice to the ratepayers because the plant will be depreciated at 25 years, and so every moment beyond that, it's much cheaper to fill the tank. And so from a ratepayer standpoint, we have to be mindful of that. We're certainly willing to supply that report around year 29 so that we can concur with the council at that point on the condition and the equipment at the facility. And again, I'll say that to actually decommission this plant, we would have to go through a FERC procedure. So again, to have that dialogue at year 29 to 30 is what we believe is an appropriate way to handle the lifespan issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time. Mr. Fugate, do you have a comment?
Yes, Madam Chair, I just wanted to respond that the documentation that was provided to us that staff reviewed throughout the report indicates that there's a design life of 25 years within this document, and that's what staff prepared its report on. I think the motion's been made for 30 years, recognizing that there's a little bit of leeway there, but beyond that, I think there should be a decommissioning of this facility, and that's what we based our review on. So.
Okay, so just let me...
And they're telling you they're not going to decommission it.
Let me just clarify with staff. So the 30 years, has this proposed facility been designed appropriately for the 30 years? If one of you could address that, please.
It'll be underwater in 30 years.
Madam Chair, I'll address that issue with respect to the design life in terms of the sea level rise issue that staff did their analysis in the review of this project. The applicant had provided some additional information to staff upon our request for additional information. And that is in your packet dated June 14th and received in the CRMC office on June 15th. On page 3 of that analysis, the applicant went through and gave various elevations of mean low water all the way up to mean high water, along with the Federal Emergency Management Agency's 100-year storm elevation, and then additional sea level rise going out into the future. They had looked at an elevation with 25 years beyond the start of the project, and I will quote, "The design life of the project is 25 years. Depending on the completion of construction, the project will reach the end of its design life approximately 2050. So based on that, with the sea level rise out to 2050, the elevation of a 100-year storm event with sea level rise going out to 2050 was 16.9 feet in elevation. The platform on which the facility is being constructed is at elevation 21. So it's a little more than 4 feet lower than the elevation of the platform. So at this point, if you want to look beyond the 25 years in terms of subsequent sea level rise, the additions would be, this is looking at the NOAA curves in 2012. You would add additional elevation, which would bring it to 17.2 feet, which is still below the platform 21 feet. And if you were to use the NOAA 2017 curves, which were issued in January of this year, after the application was submitted to the council, the sea level rise at that point brings us to 18.5 feet.
Hurricanes
That's
don't care
still
about your
below the
measurements.
21-foot elevation. This is a 100-year storm plus the sea level rise at that expected time. We did one further look using the storm tools, which is the council's recommended tool that's been developed through the beach sand process to look at future sea level rise. And a 100-year storm elevation with sea level rise 30 years out at 2055, the elevation there using the storm tools is 19.5 feet, still below the platform top elevation of 21 feet. So from a design standpoint, with sea level rise,
Excuse me, I'd like to be able to hear our staff speak.
so from just the design life with respect to sea level rise, it is below the proposed platform elevation of 21 feet.
1,000-year flood. We got a 100-year flood every year.
Come on, CRMC, defend the people.
Y'all are gambling on this.
The error bars. 2-mile explosion radius.
Down 2 foot circumference.
5 feet, probably.
We're only in 2 miles of that plan right now.
Further questions for staff on this issue or any other issue?
Are any of you all against
Mr.
it? We'd
Hudner.
love to hear from you.
A quarter-mile away from the Univar plant.
Mr. Hudner, would like to speak, please.
Complicated matter. It has a lot of issues that are
It's very
interesting
simple.
and important and worthwhile.
You can stop it.
Many of them are outside of the jurisdiction of this
No, they're
council.
not. No, we live here.
What
We
we're
live here.
authorized to do and obligated to do. And I know that probably many people will be unhappy.
What's your moral obligation?
What about people?
But I
What's in
hope
your
that everyone
heart?
will understand the intent.
No, we're not. You will be to blame.
The council brings to dealing with these matters.
Why should we be understanding of racism?
Thank you, Mr. Hudner.
Hey,
Make her appeal it. Come on, you can do this.
Mr. Gomez?
Which one of you is gonna stand
I
up for the
think
people?
the stipulation has to remain, and would 25 be better than 30, I guess is my take on it.
Zero.
30 I can live with, 25.
Yeah, you can live with it. You don't have to live with it. You don't live with it. You don't live with it. You don't have a backyard. In your backyard.
Limit, or to retain the 30-year limit.
What about what we can live with?
Would you be willing to modify it to 25?
Come on, we can do better than that, people. Zero.
You're not obligated.
Zero.
25 is too many.
Okay, so the motion remains seconded, and call a vote. Mr. DeSisto?
No one asking questions?
No,
Any of those cases. Who's got a heart? Who's got a heart?
Do your job!
Mr. Hudner?
Would you be clear what we're voting on?
When are you sharing our kids?
That's-
Your kids, stand up.
Is consistent or is not consistent?
Right, this is I'll let Mr. Sahajian restate it for us.
It's not going to be adopted.
Can you read it?
Do you know what the I don't even remember.
Federal court. You look upset, woman on the right. Are you thinking about the children that live nearby? Yeah. Is anyone? You gonna pay their medical bills?
Would you live next to this facility?
Would you put your kids next to
Or
it?
your grandchildren?
Give us a chance and vote
Put
no.
your kids
Let it go to court.
next to
Let it
this.
go to court.
Or the hospital next to this.
Yeah, what about the
You don't have to vote yes. Vote
Vote
no.
no. Vote no.
You do have power, I think you're forgetting that.
Yes, sir.
You have the power to follow your hearts and to have courage, not to just do what you think you're supposed to do. You have that power. Please go away.
The tank's been here since 1973.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, my question to you is,
This is for
Microphone, please.
Okay.
CRMC.
You like to read the motion?
so that I know what you're saying.
As I understand it, it was a motion to concur with National Grid's consistency certification, subject to the condition on the 30-year design life,
What about,
based on the representations of National Grid and testimony and documents.
So that
Do the right thing for Rhode Island.
what about our lives, not the design life?
We can't hear what you're saying.
Oh, yes, that it's consistent. The wording is, it's either concur or object. His motion was to concur with the consistency certification. Okay, so I don't think we need that read. Okay, and that, so does that clarify that for you, Mr. Hudner? Okay, and that was seconded by Mr. Gomez? Okay, so all those in favor say aye.
Voice vote,
Aye.
voice vote.
All those opposed?
Motion.